Hello YouTube, my name is Alan Sampsell and this is my channel, Alan's Cloud. Today I'm going to be talking to you about several topics. Reverse proxying is the main focus, and a couple of different programs that can allow you to do it, and some of the programs, the reasons why you might want to be using a reverse proxy. So in my case, I use a Univention Corporate Server as my main website, and I'm going to go through the process and some of the things that I did in order to get an application called Ombi to work, so that my Plex users could request movies and TV shows through that website. And I wanted to be able to serve it out there on the internet with a secure HTTPS connection. And so if any of that sounds interesting to you, if you're looking at running Radarr, Sonar, Ombi, any type of web application through a reverse proxy, this video might help, so stick around. So first, let me talk a little bit about what I was trying to accomplish here. I run a Univention Corporate Server. One of my previous videos that I did, I show you how to set that up as a virtual machine using a pre-configured virtual machine that you can download from the Univention website. But I went ahead and actually used the ISO file and installed a 500 gigabyte size virtual machine. And I run that as my website. So I've got my own domain, and the Univention Corporate Server serves the main website, and then it has several applications that it runs as well, like Nextcloud, and I run an instance of OpenOffice. Those types of applications are all kind of built into the Univention Corporate Server. And I really like it. It's been a great program so far. And one of the really nice things about it is that you can force secure connections. It's everything essentially. If you try to go to an HTTP website, it goes and forces you to the secure HTTPS version of it. And one of the applications that's inside of the Univention Corporate Server is Let's Encrypt. So once you have everything set up, you set it up with Let's Encrypt, and all of the websites that you go to that are based off of your domain are encrypted, have the SSL connection. That takes a little bit of port forwarding in the router. I kind of covered that in the other video, but I think it's 80 and 443, set to come straight to the Univention Corporate Server. And this video already assumes you have something in place, or even if you don't, even if it's just your machine that you're trying to run, there's a way to do it without having something like the Univention Corporate Server. You can just do it from your, say, Windows 10 machine, and I'll cover that a little bit as well. That was a program called Caddy, and you'll see. So that's pretty much my setup is that Univention Corporate Server. And I wanted to run another web application from my website, but point it to a different server inside of my network. So not the 192.168.0 dot whatever that my Univention Corporate Server is. I have one sitting beside it. It's a different virtual machine that runs Plex and runs a couple of different applications. Well, I actually wanted to install one called Ombi. As I talked about before, it allows Plex users or Ombi users to be able to go into this website, log in with their username and password, and request TV shows or movies and things like that. And it sort of automates the process of talking to the downloader program once you've approved it, and you set it all up so that it can send emails and notifications to the users once their requests have been fulfilled and once the files that they're looking for are available on the server. So it's a really great program. And I only learned about it a little while ago, but it seemed like a really good idea. Better than getting a bunch of text messages from friends or family. Hey, can you do X, Y, or Z? Or do you have it really? So it's a good little program, but it's like I said, it was running on that other Windows virtual machine, and my challenge was, how do I securely put it out on the web, without interfering with my current website, or in fact incorporating it into my current website is what I had to do. So yeah, it was an interesting adventure because I'd never worked with reverse proxies before, so there was a little bit of a learning curve here. I didn't, at first realize that I couldn't just, run sort of another program and throw it out there on the web, because I'm already forwarding port 80 and 443. It made it difficult to be able to do that, and so I did end up finding a way, versus running it separately on a different domain, incorporating it into my Univention Corporate Server. So I think that's a really handy feature. Once I now know how to do that, I can do it for any of my internally hosted websites, and I don't have to worry about them because they will be secure, even if they don't natively run secure, which is the case with Ombi. It doesn't natively support an SSL connection, so you have to give it one. So let me switch over here and I will show you. Let's walk through some websites here. So if you want Ombi, you can just OMBI, search that on Google, and it's this ombi.io, and it will bring you to their website here. And it's cool. You can download it or run a demo on the site and see exactly what it looks like. But like I said, this Ombi interfaces with Plex or MB, and the DVR tools. A lot of the cord cutters out there like to automate these processes, and you can take a look at the screenshots, but I'll actually show you a little bit of it here in a minute. And another cool thing, it's in its infancy, both this Ombi program and the apps, but I did get the Apple App Store app. And it's interesting. It's pretty basic at this point, but it does get the job done. They've got a couple of kinks to work out of it, but it's a good program. So that's, if you're looking to do this, you can get Ombi and connect it, and I'll go through some of the other settings of some of the other programs like Radarr that I ended up having to install as well. But like I said, the first try at doing a reverse proxy, I looked up a whole bunch of different things, and everybody said, well, Caddy. Caddy is the program that is super easy, and so I found that one first, and it's caddyserver.com, and it's a great little website that they've got here. It's free to use for personal use. If you're a business, then you're going to have to pay for it. They have different licensing arrangements, but free for personal use, and that's pretty awesome. And essentially, what it's going to do, this is really for the use case where it's just your personal machine and you're not sharing anything out there on the internet already, like I am running my own site. So you would set up something like dynamic DNS or duck DNS or no IP, and have it come back and point to a domain, come back and point to your WAN IP address, right? What your internet facing IP address, and through dynamic DNS you want to update what that IP address is. So if you have that already in place, and you in your firewall do a little port forwarding for 80 and 443 and point it to the computer that is going to be doing the web application, and you're using Caddy, what you're going to want to do is you can go here to the docs, and they've got a great tutorial on here about how to set this thing up, and it's dead easy. You can instead of using the Caddy.exe executable and throwing arguments at it, like adding tac host and then the host name that you want to do, you can create something called a Caddy file. It's essentially a configuration file, but it here, and I can actually, let me show you what that looks like. So this is my Windows 10 virtual machine, and in here under the C drive, you've got, you don't want to put it in program files when you download it. You're just going to put it in a folder called Caddy, and you know, there's the executable, and the Caddy file is simply a blank text file. You can just right click and on the desktop and create a text file, and then you save it and call it Caddy file, just like that, all one word, without a file extension. You don't want the .text piece on here. And what this does is this file passes you know, configuration variables to the executable for Caddy. And let me show you. So the Caddy file itself, again, it's just the text file. Doesn't have a file extension on it. Put it in there with a Caddy exe file, and there's two different ways that you can do it for using a reverse proxy. Most of them support it. You can either have a subdomain, which is like this link here, where you have ombi.yourdomain.com. Well, instead of www or you know, open office, you have Ombi, and so Ombi would be the subdomain for your, you know, top level domain here. And the Caddy file, it's right here. If you wanted to do it using a subdomain, this is what you would, you know, put in there, Ombi or whatever the, you know, subdomain is you want to use for it. You know, you can call it Radarr or Sonar, whatever it is you want to put out there. .yourdomain.com, or, you know, whatever it is, and then, you know, these brackets here and the spacing is pretty important. Like you know, like I said, the first line starts to the far left, second line is 1 tab, the third line is 2 tabs over before it starts, the fourth line here is 1 tab, and then the fifth line is justified all the way to the left. This piece right here, you know, that's all you have to put into that Caddy file, save it, and then execute Caddy.exe. You know, just double click it, and a window will pop up inside of Windows there, and it'll just try to go out and get all of the certificates and set everything up, and then you can actually test it once everything you know, goes through and works correctly. So but you know, that's like running a program that you would want to turn off. So you have the option in there, I think it's Control C, will stop that program and close down the box that pops up when you run Caddy. So you probably want to use a program called NSSM. It's the Non-Sucking Service Manager. It's you know, fairly easy to set up, but that will actually turn an executable like Caddy into a process, you know, that Windows will use and start up when Windows starts up. It basically demonizes it so that it runs in the background, and that's very handy for, you know, any of these programs that run like that. Caddy being one of them, or Ombi itself. You want to run Ombi. That way you want to create a service and have it run in the background. Radarr actually takes care of that for you. It does set it up as a service, but there's some configurations there that I'll run you through for Radarr that are kind of important to get that, to have the right permissions to be able to see files and folders, within your network. So again, there's two ways to do it. This configuration for the Caddy file is to use a subdomain right here. But the tutorial actually does say that you can probably use it as a subdomain. I think that if you do that, and by I'm sorry, not a subdomain, by using a path, and so it would be, instead of a subdomain up here, it would be yourdomain.com /Ombi, and that's a lot more cleaner, and that's what I ended up doing with my Univention Corporate Server. But let's move on to what did work for me in the Univention Corporate Server. So the Univention Corporate Server that I'm using uses Apache 2 for its web server, and for the reverse proxy portion of it as well. You can see here the files for that configuration are in etc Apache 2 /sites tac available. If you go in there, there are several files in there, and for the Univention Corporate Server, you're going to need to either SSH into it, or I run it as a virtual machine in Proxmox, so I can actually log in through the main page of the virtual computer, if you will. You can log in there as well, and to be able to edit files. That's the whole point of it. So again, I tried out the subdomain version of the configuration file for the Univention Corporate Server Apache file, and I did get that to work, but it had issues. And what I mean by that is I did set up I have wildcards enabled for my domain, so I set up the configuration file to say ombi.mydomain.com. The only problem was that the SSL certificates that my website already had were covering that other subdomain, but there was an error saying that it wasn't. It could be fake. It could be one site pretending to be another, and I didn't really want that for my users. I'm sure I probably could have figured that out. That was probably, I probably could have added that subdomain into Let's Encrypt, and gotten a specific SSL key for that one. I'm not sure. But again, that's not really how I wanted to do it. I wanted to do it with the path configuration. And so I did figure that out. So like it says here, I successfully used a path for my website, mydomain.com /Ombi. And the configuration that I used here is this piece, right? So for Apache, what you have to do is I named it windows-server.conf. It's a config file. And it has to go into that etc Apache 2 sites available location. There is already a file in there. I think it's default tac ssl.conf. You can actually copy that and get rid of the contents, and then just put in, this piece here. This IP address needs to be, of course, the server where Ombi is running, and then this is the port that Ombi default runs on. You can change that as well, but you probably don't need to. And then you have to be, like I said, either SSH'd in, somehow, so that you can set up these files. And while you're in there, once you've got that configuration file in there, you actually have to then activate it, right? So at the command prompt in there at the bash, this a2en site space, and then whatever your name is .conf, that file that you just created, execute that. and then it's going to pop up with a message, and then you're going to want to run this systemctl reload Apache 2. And by doing that, it's going to reload Apache, and it's going to take that new config file for the new server that you set up, and it's going to incorporate it into what the Univention Corporate Server is already running. I had originally, kind of screwed it all up by creating a config file that had way too much information in it, and was kind of overriding or redoing the virtual host for port 443. It wasn't necessary. So that, like I said, that very simple configuration did work. And that's how I'm running it today. And in that configuration with the path that I've used, the SSL certificates, I haven't had to do anything. It's all covered by it. Works great. It's the exact configuration that I was going for. So when you set this up the first time, you want to be able to test that externally. So like I said, what I do here is I take my cell phone and I take the Wi-Fi off, and I use the cellular network's internet connection to test out and make sure the website is working correctly. And then I've put this down here at the bottom. If you mess it up, if you get a spacing wrong, or you get you put the wrong base URL in there, or whatever the case may be, you can actually run the command that is the opposite of the A2EN site. It's A2dis site. That instead of enabling a site, it disables the site. And then you'll actually have to run that systemctl reload again. Then you can edit your configuration file to what it needs to be, and then start from the beginning running the enable. That should, with a little bit of trial and error, get you where you need to be as far as the reverse proxy is concerned. If you're running Apache 2 as your reverse proxy, and you're not running a Univention Corporate Server, your config file does need to be a little more complex. It has to start off with the virtual host information. When you do any Googling and looking up how to go about setting this up, you'll see several examples of what those should probably look like. But this again, because I'm using Univention, works perfectly fine. So now that I've talked about the configuration of Caddy, I've talked about the configuration for Apache 2 to get the Univention Corporate Server up and running. Let me walk you through some of the configs and kind of the end result. This is my website, and I have a WordPress instance here. This is the Ombi link that I created with my full top level domain and the path as /Ombi, and I left that there for my users to be able to come to my home page and click on that. If they somehow lost the other link or the invite that I have the Ombi program send to them. And let me actually show you Ombi at this point. So Ombi, it has its own homepage, but I'm just going to step you through the settings here for the system. This just tells you the version that it's on. Ombi has to run again, not in the program files. It has to run in just a folder on the machine that you're going to run, and mine's on Windows 10, obviously. Okay, so let's step through here. On the Ombi side of things here, this piece, these two pieces here, of course the API key is blurred out, but that's a very important piece if you want anything to be able to control Ombi. But the base URL here has to match what it is your website is and your reverse proxy are using. So if you remember, I said you have to use a path, and the path name for the reverse proxy needs to match. So put a slash and put Ombi in here. If you're using the subdomain version, then you don't need to do anything. You might have to have a slash in here for it to work correctly. But whatever you do, don't put another slash at the end of Ombi. I made that mistake, and it actually breaks the site because you know how it builds the HTML for all the different pages is of course based on this base URL, and you know, when I did it and I put another slash there, the page blanks out and you just kind of get the bar across the top that, you know, tries to refresh things. And it's because by adding another slash here, when it creates the links for all the rest of the site, it already puts a slash. So what you end up with is you know, a whole bunch of these links that don't go anywhere because there's a double slash in the center of it. So and if you do that, you can actually rerun the Ombi application and use the argument for it's tac host, and then I'm sorry, tac base URL, and then set it back to /Ombi and fix it. I ended up just, you know, deleting it, starting over because I hadn't gotten very far. So that's possible as well. Under the configuration, customization page here, the only two things, I mean, very cool of them, that you can actually enable your own custom donation link, do your own logo, you can have your own landing page here. So you know, very cool that, or actually the landing page is here, and to enable it, but you can change a lot of different things about how it looks. But two key pieces is the application name and the application URL that you put in here. These two instances, although it doesn't tell you they are variables in the email system, and I'll show you that here in a minute. Not much else under the configuration section here do you really need to mess with. So I use Plex. You put your username and password in there. You can test the link in there. It makes the connection, and Ombi is one of the nice features about Ombi is it actually reads your Plex database to see what content you have that is already available, so that people don't have to reselect or cannot reselect things that you already have and are sharing. So that's a pretty cool feature. Under TV here, you have the option for Sonar, Dog NZB, or Sickrage. And I'll throw out the fact that Sickrage here is a template. They've had some drama lately. I switched over to a fork of Sickrage called Medusa, and actually you can use Medusa in the place of Sickrage here, and it does work. It takes a little bit of tweaking, but it does work. Yeah, the important bit in setting up Medusa in the Sickrage template here is to use one singular slash right here in the base URL. If you don't come in here and put that there, it will not work. So for movies, I set up the program Radarr, and I hadn't had that. I had used Couch Potato before, but hadn't actually used it. In here, you don't actually have to set a base URL because that's only for use in reverse proxying. So that's down here at the bottom. Getting the default root folders to show up correctly, that takes a little bit of tweaking inside of Radarr, and I will show you those settings there in a minute. In notifications here under email, so you want to have, if you're going to use email, you have to enable it once you're done setting it up and saving the configuration. I use SMTP, and I use SMTP authentication. I use SMTP2go.com as my SMTP to go forwarder. You know, 587. It's a secure port. one of the things that you're going to use is probably this welcome email. And you remember how I said that the application name and the application URL back in the other page mattered? Well, this is where they come in. It actually populates these fields in here in some of these messages, you know, with that information. So once you get the email piece all set up, you have to hit submit anytime you make any changes on this page. You can test it. It'll send you a test email. Once you have all of that set up and enabled, you'll be able to, under your user management guide here, send welcome messages to all of your users. And you can also, under here, under notifications, you can send mass emails if you want to. I haven't gotten that far, you know, to be bothering anybody with doing that. But so that's the nuts and bolts of Ombi. Ombi is, like I said, it's a really cool application. Even has a mobile app. And but let me step you through some of Radarr. So Radarr.video is actually a fork of Sonar. Sonar was for television shows, and it allows you to use either, you know, BitTorrents or news groups to be able to automate downloading, you know, television shows and, you know, putting them on your home DVR system, whether you're using Plex or MB or whatever other program. So Radarr is a fork of Sonar, and it's designed for movies, but it's the same concept, and the functionality looks basically the same as well. So you go to their website, you know, again, the integration, it's got several different platforms here. I used Windows. It does install it as a service inside of Windows, but one of the things that you're going to have to do, and I'll pull up the virtual machine for Windows 10 here. I'll show you. Oops. Let's see. Go to Task Manager. This is probably the roundabout way. Services. And as long as you're sorted here by name, you can click in here and hit R, and you can see that Radarr is running. But since this isn't the full services page, you can't actually change any of the elements about it. You can, I think, start it and stop it, but that's about it. So what you want to do is come down here to Open Services. This will actually open, you know, the real services window. So same thing, highlight it in there, hit R. Radarr is in here. And the part that you're going to have to change is this logon. So you right click on Radarr, come down here to Properties. You want it to be automatic. You want it to start and stop when Windows does, essentially, and turn on when Windows does. But what the installer program for Radarr doesn't do correctly is set the logon to an actual user. It says it sets it to a, you know, local system account. But the problem with that is if you have mounted drives, or if you have a NAS machine, it can't go out on your local network with that type of account. It has to be a genuine account. So you can create a specific account for this that has those rights, or it can be the administrator account, however it is you want to do it. And then you come in here and you add that account's username and password in here, and then you want to actually stop the service and then restart it with that logon information. And that's kind of a key, because if you don't do that, you can't get to you know, local network attached storage. I have several NAS machines that are my storage here, and you can't get to those addresses on the machine. And let me actually show you the configuration for that. So here are the settings page for running Radarr. So a couple of things to walk you through here. You do want it to rename the movies as they come in. You can change, you know, some of these features about how it looks and what type of information is provided. But I like renaming, replace illegal characters. For the folders, create empty movie folders. I'm pretty sure that this just, if it's pending or requested, it creates an empty folder for it. I'd rather it not create one until it actually grabs a movie, so I keep that to no. Renaming folders, that's a beta feature at the moment. And this is an important bit here, importing. So if you're downloading them and posting them from the same machine, you could use some sort of a symbolic linking here. Make a symlink instead of actually copying the file from where it gets downloaded to where you want to store it. But that's exactly what I want to do, so I turn this off. Extra files, when it's importing them, I want my subtitle files. I want the SRT subs and info files. So the only other bit that is important here in the file management piece is if you start off with say a CAM version, and then it moves to a DVD rip, automatically it'll do that. And what it's going to do is it's going to delete the CAM file first and replace it with a DVD rip. Well, what if it wasn't actually a DVD rip? It was called that, but the quality just wasn't there, or it was in Mandarin, or something weird. You can set up this recycle bin so that it never actually deletes those files that it's trying to supersede. It'll instead of actually just deleting the CAM version, it'll put it in that recycle bin. So I think that's a kind of a cool feature. I don't have it set up at the moment, but baby steps. And I believe that's what the functionality is based on what I've read. So under profiles here, there's many different configuration videos on what this does and how to set these up. That's not really germane to this discussion here. The quality bit, same thing. Everybody has standards for the sizes of the files. It's a really handy feature, but not really necessary to this conversation. The indexers, this is where you set up where you're searching for either NZB files from newsgroup sites or torrents. So not much. Kind of cool that you can tell it this is what I don't want down here, and or this is what it must contain. You can actually add these little restrictions. These guys here, it's garbage. So I don't want any of that. So as far as the download client, SAB-NZBD, it has several of them in here. The important bit is that down here, the very bottom, is this remote path mappings. And this is part of where that part that I went into changing the login information for the actual service, this is part of where that comes in, because you wouldn't be able to add this remote path essentially to my NAS machine into this section here. Or when you first add your first movie, you have to select where you want to store your movies, right? So this took me a little bit to figure out, because you have to tell it where your downloader program, which in my case is SAB-NZBD, is putting the downloaded and completed movies, right? And then it knows to look there when it's done, and then you have to tell it where to put and store the files. Well, I want it to store it actually on my NAS machine in a specific folder that I have lots of space on. That's where I want new things to go. So it was a little counterintuitive that I had to set this up in here. Now I think this host is I think that's just a name. I don't think that's actually parsed. I don't think that it's an IP address or localhost. I don't think it actually matters. I think that's really just a name. And then this was the confusing bit. So the remote path is where your movies are being downloaded to, and that happens to be on this exact same virtual machine in this folder, right? So hypothetically, if a movie downloaded and it completes, that's where it's going to go. and that's the remote path. And then the local path is where you want the movies to be stored. Again, which in my case is on a network attached storage device. Now I've got a 10 gig connection, so the speeds are fairly quick to transfer all of these things around. But again, you know, these labels of remote and local, you know, the notions behind those are a little bit mixed up to me. I think they could have a better explanation of what these do, or at least, you know, these little, you know, question marks that give you a hint. They could, you know, put ones on these. It's that important. Lists, you know, that's if you're using something like tracked database. Connection here, you want to make it, in my case, a connection to Plex. Anytime that you know, Radarr completes something, whether it's a request for a movie that was, you know, came in from Ombi, or I set it myself, when it's done and it actually completes, this connections piece here will tell Plex that, hey, there's a new file, you should re-index yourself. So that's a very handy feature. Metadata I'm not using. The startup port for Radarr here is 7878. Again, I'm not putting this one out on the web, so I don't need a base URL in here. That is for reverse proxying. And then the enable SSL feature, this is for local connections inside of your own network, you know, not sort of over the internet type connections. And user interface is just, you know, dates and things like that. So that's the basic settings for Radarr and some of the gotchas that I run into in setting that up. You know, lots of learning over the past few days in setting all of this up, really, but had a lot of fun. And you know, I know I've kind of gone round and round about several different programs here. Ombi, Radarr, you know, Sonar, Univention Corporate Server. You know, this is the world that I live in. So you know, making all of this work was very important to me, and at the end of the day, it does work. So if you find any of this information useful, or if you got any questions for me, you know, please like the video, subscribe. Still trying to raise my numbers. I've got 70 of you now, which is awesome. And I'm going to try to keep putting out more content, but you know, it's things like this. This has taken me hours and hours to make all these mistakes and learn from them, and then putting this video, you know, together takes hours as well. So you know, like, subscribe, and you know, leave me a comment if you got any questions, or if you got any suggestions on different videos in depth about any of these specific topics that I might be able to help you with. I'm not an expert on any of this. I just learned what made it work for me. So yeah, have a good one.